Please don't do this. Don't concentrate on your relatives, because if you do this, you will never overcome your fate. God knows everything about your relatives. Let's say a small child runs up to his father and says, "Dad, I want to eat." The father says, "Okay, I understand," and goes to prepare food for the child. Now you run up to your dad every second and say, "Dad, I want to eat. Dad, I want to eat. Dad, I want to eat." He says, "Listen, you're annoying me. I'm already cooking for you." If you say, "I want to help my relative," that's enough. God already knows everything. He knew it even before that. Now you should just think about God and not about your relatives. Why do you need to put your relative next to you? So that God doesn't forget, right? He has a good memory, better than ours. He remembers everything. He remembers your past lives. He remembers everything, you understand? He hasn't forgotten anything, but you have forgotten everything. You shouldn't think about your husband. You should think about God, and God will think about your husband. I've told you this 100 times already. You don't hear me because you want to think the opposite way. This is called faith in God. You think about God and God thinks about your husband. This is called faith in God. And if a boy doesn't trust his dad, he says, "Dad, will you cook or not?" The father says, "Don't you believe me?" The boy says, "I believe you, I have faith, but you need to cook faster." You don't have to give the fruits of prayer to anyone. God knows that you're giving them anyway. You say, "I want to help my husband." That's it. You're already giving away the fruits of prayer. That's all. You don't trust God, you understand? Nothing is needed. He already knows everything. Let's say you want to help your husband. You start praying. You need to think about God. To make sure he doesn't let you down, you say to him, "I'm giving the fruits of prayer to my husband." Do you understand? So that you all understand completely, I'll show you something now so that you definitely understand everything. I'll show you how not to do it. See, there's a gopher in the picture. And at the top of the picture is a caption, "Lord, give me a fat wallet and a thin waist. Please don't mix them up." You shouldn't do it like this. You understand? You shouldn't ask God for anything. Okay, I'll explain. Look, according to the Vedas, there are so-called Shanti mantras. What are Shanti mantras? In ancient culture, people also had different faiths just like we do, but people tried to unite. And they gathered in large halls and repeated Shanti mantras. Shanti translates as peace. They repeated such prayers for peace throughout the earth. They spoke Sanskrit but had different faiths. Therefore, the prayers are also in Sanskrit. I wish happiness to everyone. I wish peace on this earth. May all living beings have good fortune. May no one suffer. Now I have a question. To which faith does this prayer belong? To all faiths. Therefore, when we repeat, "I wish happiness to everyone," this is also a prayer directed at the welfare of all living beings, but it doesn't belong to any religious tradition. That means this is simply an affirmation. I call it an attitude, but this attitude overcomes one's fate. This is true. We have already seen many examples. It sets one up for selflessness and means that God enters a person's heart at this time. You understand? There are different prayers. This affirmation, "I wish happiness to everyone," is the weakest prayer. It's stronger when you ask something from God, when you specifically address God to ask Him for something. "Lord, please give me this." This is stronger than simply, "I wish happiness to everyone." Now further, when you ask God for spiritual knowledge, not material benefits, this prayer is even stronger. And it also gives material benefits along with spiritual ones, because God knows what we need, and He gives it as well. But if you don't ask God for anything but simply praise Him, saying, "Rejoice, O Virgin Mother of God, and forget about yourself at this time," then this prayer is even stronger. Is it clear? Prayers can have different strengths. Direct address to God is stronger. And if you address Him by praising Him or pleasing Him, then it's even stronger. For example, a son runs up to his father and says, "Dad, I wish you happiness." He says, "Thank you, son," and thinks, "I need to feed him, he's probably hungry." The second option, the child runs up to the father and says, "Dad, I want to eat," and smiles joyfully. "Dad, I want to eat." Dad says, "Wonderful, I'll feed you." The next option, the child runs up and says, "Dad, teach me to live a good life, to live correctly." Father thinks, "I definitely need to feed him, he's a good person." And when a son runs up to his father and says, "Dad, I love you," this is the strongest. Dad says, "Thank you, son, I love you too." And at that moment, knowledge appears in his heart that the child is still hungry, he needs to be fed. He gives little gifts. There are eternal answers. We are talking about how to develop. The eternal question is how to live. The eternal answer is according to the scriptures. That's how it is. Now listen carefully about the most important method of overcoming fate, which is called prayer. A person must have a place in their home where they can pray. This can be just some corner or part of a room. There may be an altar. There should simply be pictures of your saints, some holy items, holy soil on your altar. Just things that are associated with holiness. There are canonical altars. Each tradition has its own canons. If you don't belong to any tradition, take all the saints from different traditions, put them together. This will be your altar. God will like this too. When a person reads a prayer, it is beneficial to light a candle. And clarified butter is also sacred because it has a very pure flame. If you take just a cotton wick and put a small cup with clarified butter, light the wick, then this is good for prayer. The flame of clarified butter is very beneficial. The wax bees make and candles made from this wax are also considered sacred. Bees are very beneficial insects. They have the right consciousness. They always think about love, look for nectar and pollen, which is the energy of love from plants. So bees have a very pure, positive consciousness. Therefore, all products of their life activity are healing. Royal jelly, pollen. Pollen is sold in the form of small balls. It should be added to soup. Although it has a sweet taste, it is considered a spicy seasoning. It should be added to soup. It stimulates digestion. You can add a few grains each time to the soup. So when you pray, you should not move. You can pray both in a whisper and loudly. Most often people can't pray loudly because it will disturb neighbors or relatives trying to sleep. Most often people pray in a whisper, but it's better to pray aloud. But if you pray in your mind, this prayer does not overcome fate because thoughts are in the mind. Thoughts are our fate, and your thoughts will always be stronger than your prayer, because only very strong and holy people can pray in their mind. All other people should pray aloud, because if you don't repeat the prayer aloud, the intelligence doesn't engage, and therefore there will be no victory over fate. If you sit or stand in one position and you get tired, you can change position. It doesn't change the power of prayer. But if you start walking, you have already weakened the power of prayer. That means that your strength will be much weaker, and the victory over fate will also be weaker, because the intelligence is difficult to engage during movement. It engages mainly only when a person doesn't move. Remember that? There are several ways to pray. One way is to look at the altar and bow mentally. The second way, you half close your eyes and just listen to the sound of prayer. Both are good. If you half close your eyes and listen to the sound of prayer, and at this time you feel sleepy, it means your listening is very weak. Then you need to look at the altar. Because if a person listens attentively, no matter how they sit, with closed eyes or open, they will never fall asleep, and their consciousness is always very strong and alert during this time. But if a person's consciousness becomes cloudy, they lack concentration, then it's best to look at the altar. If you bow during prayer, then this is not a prayer that overcomes fate. This is a prayer of making amends, perhaps. It's like exercise. So you bow, and during this time you go through a process of learning, but this is not a prayer that overcomes fate. To overcome fate, you need to sit motionless, and you can bow mentally, but the body should not move. There are prayers that give ideas about life and about God, for example, Psalms. These are not prayers that overcome fate, and they are read just once in the morning and in the evening. Or let's say namaz is also read in the morning and evening. This is a call to prayer, namaz. A call to prayer, but not the prayer itself, because the prayer itself is when a person reads a short prayer. God should be glorified in it. God or His name or His deed or the Mother of God is glorified in this short prayer. Next, a person asks only for spiritual blessings, nothing more. If they ask for something better, they simply glorify God. And this prayer is read on prayer beads. It's not as long as Psalms. It is read on prayer beads, and it is read many, many times in a row. And each time the person overcomes their fate more and more. A prayer that overcomes fate doesn't mean that you read many, many different prayers. It is one prayer that a person repeats many times. Such a prayer overcomes fate. Now those people who want to really overcome fate, listen to my advice. Take a recording of the monks chanting in your tradition. They don't necessarily have to be holy, just those who sing sincerely, and you should like it. And repeat the prayer with them, not necessarily the same one, but in their mood. When you repeat a prayer, you should intensely listen, not to yourself at first, but to them, because to listen to yourself, your intelligence needs to engage, and this takes time, usually about 20 minutes. If you listen to them intently, then at first you will just listen to them, synchronize your voice with them for some time. You don't need to repeat at the same speed, you need to repeat with the same mood, and you don't need to sing the prayer, but simply read it. They sing, and you read. At the next stage, you will listen to them, and inspiration will appear in your heart, and your voice will become firm. For women, it becomes more resonant. For men, deeper like thunder. This means that the intelligence is engaging. At the third stage, you will feel that your heart has opened. At this moment, the opening of the heart, what does it mean? It feels good inside. You think, oh, how good it feels. At this time, the gates of fate open. Usually they are closed. All people usually have a closed heart. But when a person's intelligence engages and gradually the sound of prayer reaches the heart, this is what happens to them. Who experienced this yesterday? This is when your work on yourself began. When this happens, you can repeat the prayer from your heart. You will feel that it really comes from your heart, and then you continue to repeat the prayer from the heart while listening to those who pray, so that the power of your intelligence does not weaken. And to whom should you address while reading your prayer? There are several options. First, you give your prayer back to those who pray. You can establish relationships with them. The second option, you give the prayer to the altar, to the shrine. And the third option, simply give it to people, wishing happiness to everyone. If you want to overcome your fate, never give your prayers to your relatives and to your beloved self. Because when a person thinks about their relatives during prayer, they can never overcome fate because they don't let God in there. If we think, it means fate acts. If we think about ourselves or our relatives, it means I am inside fate. It's impossible to overcome it. If I forgot about my thoughts and my problems and think about God and serve Him, then at this time God begins to think about us and helps us. And you will see later how our relatives get better. How can you track it? For example, after prayer and before prayer, you can remember your loved one. All the information is in this memory. If your memory is anxious, you feel bad remembering them, it means everything there is not smooth. But if you pray, then remember a loved one and feel the memory become light, it means you are overcoming fate. If the memory becomes light and calm, this means the first stage of victory over fate has been achieved. But if you cannot detach from your problem during prayer, it means that during this time you are not overcoming fate. You can overcome fate when you forget about the problem and think about God or prayer. Therefore, you need to listen intently to those who pray to distract yourself from your memory of yourself. Believe me, it's not easy, but it's possible. The moment when you distract yourself from yourself, your heart will rejoice, and you will feel how God begins to act within your fate. He is always ready to act. We don't let Him in because we constantly think about ourselves. We don't let Him in for a second. We are afraid of losing control over the situation. We can bow, we can rejoice in the same person. This means giving. We can make promises saying, I will try, please. This is called serving. Bow, rejoice, make promises, love, believe. Thank you, Lord. I'm fine. I don't need anything from you. But if you are truly a reasonable person, you will understand that when a person is doing well and everything is fine, then you need to glorify God and forget about yourself. And then God will be so pleased with you that you will never have a bad fate. There are people here, many people, who ask me about how to live further, what to do, but there are people who simply say, Dr. Torsunov, thank you for everything. These people receive more than those who ask because they have forgotten about themselves. At this moment they think about gratitude. When a person thanks God, praises Him, rejoices, at this time they receive 1,000 times more than if they think about themselves. Is that clear? But it's very difficult to distract yourself from yourself, believe me, especially when things are bad, life is hard. It's incredibly difficult for a person to detach from themselves, and therefore you need to listen to those who pray together. Now, when a person has already detached from themselves, this is where the victory over fate begins. How strongly does this affect fate? You can't even imagine how strongly this affects fate. It has an enormous power of influence on fate. I have friends who use this method, and they told me about a girl who, according to her horoscope, had practically no chance of getting married. She prayed in this way, and the guy who eventually married her also had a bad family fate, and he also prayed with our team, using this method. And then at some point they felt that everything would be good soon. They felt lightness in their hearts. They felt that they had stopped worrying about their family life. When people come to me saying they can't get married and they're worried, this indicates the amount of work they need to do to overcome fate. Some girls are not married, but they don't ask me questions. They smile and feel that they will get married soon. This means that they have already overcome their fate, and the same thing happened with these two young people. But their fate was so difficult that they couldn't even meet anyone in their lives. They didn't even have the opportunity to meet someone. And God arranged it so that a monk came to visit us, and he looked at both of them, and secretly called one and then the other. He's a monk, an unmarried man himself. He introduced them to each other. An excellent family was created. Moreover, the guy and the girl didn't want to meet at first. They resisted. I also helped a little in this situation. I literally dragged him into marriage. I said, "You have to marry this girl." He didn't believe it at first. Now they have an excellent family, they are happy, and they have a good relationship. The problem was specifically about meeting each other. When they met, everything went well. This is how prayer works. It really overcomes fate. A person's fate is simply defeated with the help of prayer. We have thousands of such examples, lots of examples. Because that's how a breakthrough in fate really happens. How does this breakthrough happen? First, a person prays. It seems to them that nothing will work out. It's impossible to overcome fate until they distract themselves from their problem. But gradually, by listening to those who pray, fate is defeated. People ask, what if they are not holy people? How can you overcome fate with them? Know that it doesn't matter whether they are holy or not. The main thing is that people are simply moving somewhere. If you listen to them and they are moving toward God, then it doesn't matter. Even if sinners pray, both you and they are moving toward God. You listen to them, pray with them, and also move toward God. That's it. The process has started, and it's easier to listen to someone else than to yourself. You understand? When you listen to yourself, you also listen to your sins, not just your prayer. And when you listen to other people who pray, you will only listen to their prayer. You won't listen to sins. This is the tremendous advantage when people pray with someone. They easily distract from themselves and thus quickly begin to move toward victory over fate. Moreover, according to the Vedas in our time, God Himself wants everyone to pray together because the atmosphere is heavily befouled. When a person is alone with themselves, they think very sinfully, but when a person is with someone, or at least they play a recording of the prayer, the sins are pushed aside and they can defeat fate more easily. At the moment when a person begins to calm down in their heart and think about God, that means they bow to the altar, they rejoice in holy people, they rejoice in the scriptures. You can worship the scriptures, you can worship holy people, you can worship a holy place. It's different in all traditions. All this is correct. You can worship the written holy name of God. This is all correct. Each tradition has its own specific details, but in general all this is correct. If a person does this, then gradually they come to complete calmness about some specific problem. First, their heart is filled with the energy of strength or happiness. The heart first becomes calm. Then this energy begins to flow where it needs to. God always knows which hole to plug first in our lives. We also know all this well, and God knows the same thing. He doesn't have a different opinion. And when the heart is already filled, then this hole is uncorked and the flow begins to go there. At the moment when the flow goes in the right direction, the person immediately begins to receive knowledge about what to do. That means knowledge comes at the second stage of victory over fate. A person gets a complete understanding of how to overcome their fate. For example, if a husband is leaving, at the second stage, a woman understands how to behave correctly with him so that he doesn't leave. Knowledge comes to her. At the second stage, when victorious energy begins to flow through the channel between them, then a relationship is established further. If there is a problem, you begin to perceive this problem with ease. If it's about a close person, it's easier for you to communicate with them. If it's a boss, it means you forgive each other. If it's a child, it means contact is established with them. That means at the second stage, which is the stage of contact, relationships are established. At the third stage, the situation begins to change. If it's a sick person, they begin to heal. If it's a boss, they change their attitude toward you. If it's a close person, they are drawn to come back to you and so on. This is how fate is overcome. To go through all these three stages, it takes at least half a year, because usually difficult situations progress slowly. It's a slow, gradual process. At first it seems impossible, but then gradually it seems easy. Impossible turns into easy. You just need to force yourself to go this way. And forcing yourself is the hardest part. Remember that the most difficult thing in everything I've told you about prayer is to start. Therefore, I suggest this method to you. Force yourself to pray for 5 minutes every day. Force yourself to pray every day for 5 minutes, no more. Not 10, not 15, not 25 minutes, but do it every day. And pray like this for a month, 2 months. Pray for 5 minutes every day. Then carefully add another 5, but again every day without exception. And when you become capable, add 5 minutes more. When you pray for 5 minutes every morning, your life will change dramatically. I can tell you that for certain. You'll say, I don't have time. Everyone can find 5 minutes during the day. Even 5 minutes changes your whole life because you engage in prayer. Getting into contact with God is the hardest part, and then everything will go as it should. The most difficult thing is precisely to start. Remember that. It's not that you don't have time, you don't have the strength to start. But if you get used to praying for 5 minutes every day, then your life will surely change for the better. But if you tell yourself, I can do 20 minutes right away, that will be a mistake. Because on some day you won't pray for 20 minutes and you'll say, I can't do it, so everything is lost. And everything will end for you then. When you wake up, get up, you need to take a shower. First, when a person wakes up, they should brush their teeth, clean their tongue. The tongue also needs to be cleaned because toxins accumulate there, so you have to scrape it with a spoon. Then men shave, then take a shower. It's better to go to the toilet before showering, then take a shower. After the shower, start your prayers. And then you can do everything else. Also, when you prepare food, if you read prayers at this time, then this food becomes blessed food. If this blessed food is eaten by your loved ones, then they change faster than if you were to nag them. They change their lives 1,000 times faster than if you were to nag them every day. Just read prayers when you cook. Force yourself to do this and think that you are cooking not for your loved one but for God, because God will certainly accept your food as an offering. Not that He will eat it all and nothing will be left for your loved ones. Although that happens too, my dears, it happens, but it doesn't happen to us. You understand? I'll give you an example. About 500 years ago, there lived a little boy. He was only 5 years old. When his father went to the market, he told the boy, today you will offer food to God. Make sure that he definitely eats it. The boy was small, and children understand everything literally. The little boy put the prepared food on the altar.